Okay. Okay. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and I apologize for the delay in getting started. We want to thank Kalika for helping me through this the technical process of getting started. My name is Cullen Hayashida, and I've been involved with aging and gerontology for about 40 years in Hawaii and elsewhere, mainly in East Asia. But I've been involved with aging and uh, and gerontology issues in a hospital setting, addressing issues having to do with the flow of patients back into the community, assistant administrator for nursing home, director for a gerontology program at Kapiolani Community College. And right now I'm doing various work having to do with active aging. I want to thank Kalika for helping me and HPGS for sponsoring this webinar, this HPGS webinar. And I also want to thank St. Francis that has been involved with pushing towards the creation of some of these types of services in active aging, and also the Aloha United Way that provided us with 3 years of funding to get some of this work done. So with that in mind, what we wanted to talk about today was active aging, the new paradigm for gerontology, ? So this is not to suggest that we do away with the existing paradigms of gerontology, but look at this as a complement to what is presently available. What I wanted to do first of all was to just provide a kind of a global overview, as well as some of the challenges facing the state of Hawaii, particularly with reference to financing and with services and workforce shortage issues in providing care for the elders from the existing traditional perspective on aging. What I also wanted to do was then to shift and pivot and look at what we call active aging. What is this all about? And then also talk about some of the possible implications that might emerge from this focus on active aging. First of all, what I wanted to do was share with you this video of what is happening in Japan from 1930 to 2050, and it shows the rapid aging of Japanese society, the reduction of and the growing numbers of older adults. This is a very, very significant trend. It is not just happening in Japan, but it's also occurring in pretty much much of Europe, the US, China, much of Southeast Asia. In fact, much of Southeast Asia, Asia is probably going to be aging much more rapidly than the rest of the nation, than the rest of the world. So this is something that I think that we all need to be very much aware of, because what happens in Japan will be a precursor of what will possibly be happening in the rest of the world. And the implications in terms of what they do there is going to be something that is well worth tracking, because the Asians can read and understand English, and so a lot of the gerontological knowledge from the West is going to the East. But we can't read Japanese, we can't read Chinese and Korean, Indonesian, and so the development that occurs there obviously is not shared with us in rapid order. And so consequently, we need to spend a lot of time just paying attention to what is going on over there as well. So I'm looking at gerontology, particularly from a long-term care delivery perspective, and that's where I come from. And from that perspective, there are three major things that come to my mind as being important. One is financing, one is services, and the third being workforce. These are three pillars, so to speak, that will drive and determine whether or not we are able to meet the needs of the frail and disabled older adults as their numbers continue to grow. And what we are finding right now is that we're challenged with a great deal of shortage issues. Here are some concerns that we have for Hawaii, for example. This is data from 2000 to 2025 in terms of the fastest growing states in the US as far as the oldest old. And we have Hawaii among the top 4. This is not something that we are totally unaware of. The national average is running approximately, I would say closer to the median of 66%. So given that, what I wanted to also point out was when we look at our long-term care bed capacity in Hawaii, and this is just data that is somewhat dated from 1981 to 2004. But and what we see is that with the red line basically being the number of nursing home beds that we have in the state of Hawaii, and the gray bars there represents the number of elders, people over 65 over time. And what we see, obviously, is that the gray bar is continuing to increase. In 2004, it was in the tune of about 140,000. I think we're way in excess of 200,000 at this point, over 65. But the point here is that the nursing home bed supply has remained relatively flat. According to this graph, it's increased by 46%. It's hardly noticeable, but it's up by 46%. But the elderly population has increased by 114%. So we're not keeping up with the demands for nursing home bed supply. Same thing with costs. We know these are figures and information, of course, that you are pretty much familiar with. The cost of acute care and long-term care for those over 65 is quite expensive. And these are just examples of some of the costs associated with these various services, much of which are being used by older adults. So what is happening is we have patients that are entering our hospitals. They don't go from home to the nursing homes immediately. Usually it's from home to the hospitals to a nursing home. And we have an increasing number of our patients entering into our nursing homes, and the demands for services and the resources becomes overwhelming. And in this particular cartoon here, you know, the doctor is telling a sick patient, probably an older patient, yes, that her blood pressure is way up and temperature is way up, but her Medicare coverage is way down and looks like she can go home. So this is the a strong indication of the tremendous amount of pressure that is being placed on hospitals, basically to get patients out quicker and sicker, because the need for resources, the shortage of finances and services, and of workers is a critical issue. And the best way to do that is to sort of get patients out as quickly as possible. So one of the things that we are struggling with right now has to do with financing. And so here I'm just going to provide you with a list of various kinds of things that we've been thinking about or working on in terms of how are we going to finance long-term care for those that are sick and disabled and frail. So we've got tax possibility for tax credits to change behavior. Tax increases a possibility. We're encouraging more people to buy long-term care financing packages like long-term care insurance, reverse mortgages. We're having some discussions with people about liquidating their fixed assets. There's also various things that are being done to ration services that are being provided today and being paid today by long-term care insurance and by Medicare, Medicaid. We've got increases in copay. We've got advanced directives, tightening of eligibility, restrictions on services, free services, reduction in free services, reduction in long-term care bed supplies, increases in the number of home and community-based services that are available. HMOs have become very important. And even pensions from defined, we're shifting from defined benefits to defined contributions, which means that many of our boomers today that are moving forward that will just have defined benefits, defined contributions, will struggle with their years ahead. So other things has to do in terms of financing strategies has to do with consolidating bureaucracies. We've come up with the ADRC, Aging and Disability Resource Center, as a one-stop shop. Pooling of existing resources is another thing that is being considered. We're empowering communities and volunteerism with more self-help information. We've got the age-friendly cities. We've got the Blue Zone and other sorts of things like that is focused around trying to build communities. And then we've got family caregiver support programs that are also available today. And then we've got other initiatives focusing on promoting consumer control, increasing awareness about the high cost of long-term care and that people should begin planning and preparing for that, providing people with choice and emphasizing the importance of self-responsibility. So that's on the financing side. On the workforce shortage side, perhaps Hawaii and the US may not be as challenged as many parts of East Asia, but this is just an example of the various kinds of things that people throughout the world are thinking about in terms of how are they going to deal with the growing numbers of older adults and the shortages of workers. We've got programs, companies, not companies, but nation states are trying to increase birth rates and births so that over the next 20 years, there will be more people that will be paying taxes to help pay for long-term care, and there will be more people within 20 years perhaps that will be able to enter the workforce and provide support as far as elder care services. We've got an emphasis now on postponing the retirement age. Social Security is already involved with that, so that full benefits is incrementally being posted at a later date. Increase in the employment of women, perhaps less significant here in comparison to many parts of East Asia, but this is also something that we can think about. Increase in foreign immigration. We've got increase in emigration or sending older adults away, something that seems unthinkable, but this is something that is going on even within the US. We've got Americans that are moving on to Mexico and Central America. In Japan, we've got many older adults moving to the Philippines and Thailand because the cost of living is less, and so the yen or the dollar can go much further. And so by emigrating to another country, it's possible to possibly reduce the need for workforce shortages for workers. We got enhanced training that is a constant need that we've got to work on new ways and better ways of providing training. Increase community development with elder care, increase employment of older workers, promote gerotechnology, new kinds of technologies that can keep people well and healthy for a longer period of time. This will continue to grow and expand very rapidly over time. And then finally, we need to look at active aging as another tool, another strategy that can address workforce shortage. So what I wanted to now shift towards is what one of the terms that has been used frequently has to do with the fact that we have long life expectancy. So let's use the term lifespan in place of life expectancy here. And what we have for this is just a graph that refers to U.S. men in the for the year 2004 and 2010. And what we see is lifespan for men in the U.S. in 2004 was 77.1 years. Health span is the period of time that one is healthy versus the length of time, health span being the length of time that you are alive. So what we see here is that health span is 70.4 years for 2004 for men, and lifespan is 77.1. The difference between the two is the number of years that we are unhealthy. So for 2004 for men, this amounted to 6.7 years. Again, for 2010, the number of unhealthy years was 6.1. Now, the point here is that what we need to do is not just look at life expectancy or health span, but we also need to look at health span as well. This is what we really need to focus on. So this is another way of looking at the same thing internationally. So we've got figures here for health span and lifespan for 4 countries, the US, Korea, China, and Japan. There are some variations in terms of lifespan, greatest in Japan, less in China. But the information that I wanted to focus on was the number of years of disability here. So here we have 8 years, 7.77 years, and 6.9. This is the number of years that people, this is the gap between health span and lifespan for these 4 countries. The goal should be on reducing the years of disability, reducing the years of disability. This is what we need to focus on. So what this results in is a focus on what Peter Lassett, a European gentleman, I believe is from England, several years ago, talked about the theory of the third age. And this is a rather simplified version of this, but the third age makes reference to the fact that we've got 4 periods in life here. We've got the childhood period from 0 to 20, the first age, the adulthood years, midlife from 21 to 60, so to speak, the second age. We've got the third age here from 61 to 80, and then the fourth age from 81 plus. Now, each age had a different set of activities. So childhood years, we're focusing on education, on socialization, immaturity, dependence. The adulthood years, of course, we're working, we're mature, we're earning money, we're independent. And oftentimes we forget and we then shift towards the older adult and focus on the health challenges, the losses, death and dying, and all of these other issues here. And what we forget is that we've got, in this period right now, an encore period, a 20 to 30 year bonus. And this is the focus of the active age, of active aging. So should we focus or should we pivot to this new gerontology called active aging? Well, you know, there's been discussions in the past, various kinds of theories some people have talked about. For example, the disengagement theory, where, you know, as we get older, we get weaker. Perhaps what we should do is disengage from our normal active lifestyle and remove ourselves from that type of activity, since that might be a little bit too stressful, and this might be the way to live optimally. There's others that have said, well, No, there's a sociologist or gerontologist by the name of Robert Havikhurst back in 1961, I believe, that talked about activity theory. So it was the opposite of disengagement. So the idea was optimal aging is when individuals are actively involved in activities, pursuits, and relationships. There were other people like Dr. James Fries, who around 1998, I believe, that came up with some new terms like the compression of morbidity, the fact that as we get older, the whole society, if we remain healthy, we can reduce the period of morbidity of sickness. And then he talked also about what he referred to as the rectangularization of the survival curve, such that we can have people living long and well up until their natural lifespan, followed by immediate death. And so consequently, you have this rectangularization of the survival curve. So there are people in the past that have been talking about concepts like this. And there was more recently, around 1998, about the same time that Dr. Fries had written his paper, Dr. Rowe and Kane had written a book called Successful Aging. And this is one of the first time that the term had been coined. And there was the idea that successful aging involves the absence of disease, high physical and cognitive function, and social engagement. And this was a very important turning point, a work that has been continuously referred to. And there's been some other work by others since that time. Even in 2002, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, came up with a definition of active aging. So there's been a lot of things going on in this particular area, and it still tends to be a relatively new concept. I was recently looking at a textbook entitled Key Concepts in Gerontology, printed in 2010. And I flipped through the book, and there was no mention to the use of the word active aging. There was reference to successful aging, but not active aging. So what we have, though, right now is this boomer generation that is expanding very rapidly. There are 78 million Americans right now. And back in 2011, the first of this particular generation started turning 65 on a daily basis. So this is like 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 a day for the next 20 years, resulting in 77 to 78 million older adults. And so this represents a huge population. They control a tremendous amount of the US wealth. Their net worth is far greater than those under 35. And their annual income, as pointed out here, is something that we need to all pay attention to. So this is a big group, and they represent the new age population that perhaps will become the focus of this discussion that we have with regards to active aging. So what we're looking at are retirees, and as Mark Friedman in his book called Prime Time stated, retirees are our largest untapped natural resource. So in this particular graph here, you've got an older adult providing caregiving services, or teaching, or painting, or socializing, or mentoring, using the computer perhaps for business or for work or for other purposes, doing delivery of meals, Meals on Wheels, or here teaching and perhaps mentoring or providing some consultation services for a group. recycling, or there's, in this instance, perhaps playing at a concert. So you've got this huge resource of older adults, many of them with a tremendous amount of talents, skills, um, and time on their hands. And the question is whether or not they can somehow be a resource for the greater good. When we look at aging, this is the tendency, the shift that we need to make is represented here. So can we look at elders as community assets? Older adults with experience, skill, money, knowledge, contact, and time. Can we transform older adults from just being in this role-less role to becoming positive elder roles? Can we provide them with new identities as contributing members of society? I ran into one person recently who once told me that at one point he was on the who's who list in Hawaii. So very, very influential person. But he said that today he's a who's that. So upon retirement, there's just a loss of a tremendous amount of self-identity. Work, obviously, is more than just money. It's social status, it's identity. But how can we, in a sense, take a look at those that are retiring and help them transform from this role-less role into some positive elder role? And how can we shift elders from simply being consumers, focusing on their needs as consumers, to older adults as contributors to our society? And then we've got many older adults that feel that they have purpose, but much of the purpose is focusing around self-enrichment. But can we shift the discussion from simply focusing on self-enrichment to passing on our knowledge, our skills, our experience, our contacts, and our time, passing it on to the next generation, passing on our assets with purpose for the greater good. So this is all part of this shift from a sick care to a well care type perspective. This shift, if we were to look at gerontology, will require a lot more concepts, concepts that may generate programs, and programs that will require evaluation. So we've got terms like positive aging, successful aging, productive aging. The word third age has emerged. Encore career has developed. Vital aging has been used. And there are many, many more terms. This whole area is constantly evolving. We have not come up with a good word for older adults in their third age, so to speak. Okay, and other concepts that have been emerging, things like generativity. Maslow came out with this word when he came up with his theory of the hierarchy of needs. Generativity, the idea of giving back or passing on our knowledge, wisdom, and our talents to the next generation, is captured in this term. Someone else had made reference to the concept called returnment. Life, rather than simply talk about life expectancy, active life expectancy perhaps may be more pertinent or more relevant for this whole discussion of active aging. Related to that is health span versus just lifespan. Pay it forward, encore career, second act. Life reimagined is another term that AARP has been using recently. Another term has to do with saging, from aging to saging, age as an asset, and of course we've heard of the term called the young old. So there's this process of development, refinement, in the measurement of new concepts so that we can begin creating new programs and initiatives and evaluating them with this new perspective. This whole field right now is just changing, as I said, and much more will be happening in the future. So when we look at active aging, one way of looking at this would be to think in terms of various facets of fitness. So if we take the term fitness as a central concept, we have physical fitness, and there's various forms from cardio to stretching to balance to strength building and that sort of thing. But and there's a lot of research that can be done and have been going on with regards to the impact that physical fitness has on improving our health condition over time in terms of active lifestyle. Financial and legal fitness is another area that we need to look at. Mental and emotional fitness. Nutritional fitness, you are what you eat. Social fitness, we know that isolation is very, very corrosive, and that it may be just as corrosive, if not more corrosive, than smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. And then we've got civic and social or spiritual fitness. That is, this focuses on the need to somehow carry on and share our wisdom to the next generation and provide services, paid or unpaid, for the greater good. Concept of active aging, in a sense, is multifaceted and sort of is captured by these various components that is referred to here under fitness. So when we look at active aging, this is the way in which we're viewing life. So the vertical axis is your functional ability, their ability to eat, bathe, dress, groom, feed, toilet, get in and out of bed by yourself. So, and the horizontal axis is your age from 0, let's say, to 100. And obviously, when you are born, you're an infant, you lack in your ADL skills, and so you're way down, very low in terms of your functioning ability. But as you age, by the time you're 10, you probably can do all of the ADLs, and you can remain fairly functional for a fairly long period of time until you begin to neglect many of these aspects of active aging that we just pointed out earlier. And you can go down this slippery slope of usual aging, resulting in poor health and a whole variety of chronic health conditions that are unattended. The goal is to keep that line up horizontal up until our natural lifespan, followed by immediate death. So the goal is to live long and to die short. We do not want to live long and die long. We don't want to live long. We don't want to live short and die long, obviously, or live short and die short. The goal is to live long and die short. So how do we do this? We focus around having a physically active and mentally stimulating lifestyle, strong social engagement, purpose and meaning, and an environment that support this lifestyle. So when we talk about active aging and the challenges that Hawaii faces, nation faces, the world faces as far as financial shortages and workforce shortages, question is whether or not an active aging perspective or an active aging approach can have any bearing in improving the situation. Well, with finance, the question is, can an active aging strategy help control the cost of long-term care if we promote living long and dying short with increased healthy lifespan? And then with workforce shortage, can an active aging strategy moderate the need for more healthcare workers if older adults postpone their disability? And if so, what infrastructural changes are needed to promote this shift in perspective? What infrastructural changes are needed? So there's a whole variety of issues that are related to the third age that I'll just sort of allude to very quickly. And these are areas that can result in programs, evaluation, and research.
over time. So you've got health and wellness. There's a whole variety of things that can be done there. Finance and legal security. There's work, paid or unpaid. There's learning. There's relationships, leisure and play, housing options, civic engagement, and fourth age planning. So there's a lot of things that can be done with these various facets. And we've got a lot of people right now in Hawaii that are involved with many of these various issues. But oftentimes we don't see ourselves as working together, or we tend to be working in silos and do not realize that we're all, there's an overarching theme that perhaps we are all associated with. Now, what I wanted to share with you very quickly was what, in fact, Hawaii is doing, not just Hawaii, but St. Francis Healthcare System of Hawaii is doing. And this is based upon the work that I've been involved with using grant monies from the Aloha United Way program. And the focus has been on 3 programs, all of which has been directed towards trying to build infrastructure to increase the likelihood of creating more individuals pivoting towards this type of active aging lifestyle. One of the first things that we did was work on an awareness campaign. So we have a television show on Lelo. It's called the Kupuna Connections TV show series, and it's been going on for quite some time, even when I was over at KCC. But recently, while at St. Francis, we have focused only on active aging topics. And so we promote and showcase programs in Hawaii, whether or not it's focusing on nutritional fitness or financial fitness or physical fitness, whatever. As long as it deals with an active aging program, we'd like to showcase them. The other thing that we're doing with this particular program is we're looking for role models out there, rock stars, people that have understood how to live long, how to live with engagement and continue to contribute to the community. And what we do is we interview them and have them share some of their manao, their wisdom, their knowledge and their insights, so that perhaps we can encourage more people to live likewise. So this is part of our awareness campaign. There's many, many more things like this that can go on. The other thing that we're doing is doing presentations in the community all the time. The second thing that we're working on is a warehouse of opportunities. And this is a online and hard copy inventory of resources and opportunities for boomers and retirees. What we have today in Hawaii by our area agencies on aging, and this is pretty much seen also in other parts of the world as well, parts of the US as well, is the senior information handbooks is a common tool that is frequently distributed. On Oahu, the American Savings Bank has been a prime sponsor in its publication. But if you look at this book carefully and comparable books in other area agencies on aging, the focus has been on having a directory of nursing homes and assisted living and assisted transportation, Meals on Wheels program, adult daycare services. These are all well and good and very important, but they are all focusing on the needs of the frail and disabled older adults. This is not services that boomers need, people that are pre-retirees or active retirees. Those individuals are looking for resources and opportunities that is non-existent right now. And so consequently, at St. Francis Healthcare System, with the support of Aloha United Way, we were able to put together a hanaho active aging resource directory. And so if one were to go to the St. Francis website under services and click on active aging, you'll be able to download this particular website, this particular warehouse of opportunities. And there's going to be a lot more work that has to be done to keep providing more resources like this for our growing numbers of boomers that are looking for opportunities to remain engaged. And then the final thing that we've been working on as far as infrastructure is a training program to help people transition into retirement with meaning and with purpose. When we think about those that are graduating from high school, we find that our juniors and seniors in high school are provided with a lot of different kinds of support, from vocational counselors, SAT tests. They've got the military, they've got technical school, community college, you've got the university. And there's a whole variety of other kinds of opportunities out there to help people find where they can best fulfill their dreams of developing a career for their next 20 to 30 years. But when we talk about boomers that are retiring, they hit 65 and they've got 20 to 30 more bonus years ahead of them in relatively good health. It is like falling off a cliff. There is nobody there to provide them with some kind of assistance, to guide them, to have some valuable and successful ways of living going forward. So what we did at St. Francis was we have created a transition into retirement workshop. And this is something that we've done and we're doing right now, and we hope to continue doing in the future. So these are infrastructural work. Hopefully, awareness campaign, creating an inventory of resources, providing training to help people make this kind of transition. And there will be other kinds of things that we have to do infrastructurally to make to basically assist our boomer population. I'd like to shift and focus a little bit about on this whole issue of age as an economic opportunity. And the reason why I want to do this is in part because when we look at gerontology today, we find it's so difficult to get young students interested in the field of aging. When you tell students that you're going to major in gerontology, they said, well, that's nice, but I don't want to be a nursing home administrator, thinking that that's all there is to being in gerontology. And I have been with the the Association for Gerontology and Higher Education for many years. And one of the big challenges that gerontology programs at the university level and community college level nationally has had is that they found some decline in interest among older adults, among students in this particular field. And so there's this question with regards to how can we attract more students? Perhaps we need to look at new career opportunities for students with a background. One of the things along that line that I tried to do while I was over at Capillan Community College was I sent out a memo, an email to 300 faculty at the college, and I told them, can you provide me with 1 hour of your class time so that I can talk to your students? And I don't care whether or not you are teaching a nursing class or a computer education class or a legal assistance class or culinary class, business, whatever. I'd like to have 1 hour of your class time. And many of the other faculty did take me up on this. But the point was that regardless of what field you enter into or plan to enter into, almost invariably, most of your customers, your patients, will be older adults. So to the extent that one begin to understand this older adult population, some of their needs that is different from your needs, perhaps you might become much more successful down the road. And so this was the message that I was trying to convey when I was talking and trying to persuade some of the professors over at Kapiolani Community College to give me 1 hour of their class time. So we need to perhaps think in terms of what students are looking for, and perhaps they are looking for economic opportunities so that they can find a career that is challenging. And perhaps this picture here is a picture of the boomer that we're looking at, and not the person that is using a wheelchair or a walker. What I have here is the various kinds, and this particular slide is pretty crowded, unfortunately, but it lists all of the different kinds of industries or categories where people can find employment. On the left-hand side, you have non-medical caring, you've got equipment, you've got information technology, leisure, finance, housing, alternative medicine, farming, and transportation, food, medicine, end-of-life care, clothing even, and education. So you've got all these different kinds of category. And the point with the examples that I have on the right-hand side are examples of different kinds of businesses that will become possible in the future and even today if we begin thinking in terms of the needs of the long living boomers for the longevity economy. Even if you take something like clothing design, well, one would think that clothing may not have much to do with older adults, but if we have young students that are interested in clothing design, only focusing on the clothing design needs of teeny boppers and young people, a population that will be shrinking over time, that's one approach. If we can talk to them and suggest that this population of boomers is growing and their needs for clothing styles and the kinds of clothing that, and then the colors perhaps might be different from those of your generation. This is something that they may need to pay attention to. Perhaps they may need to place, put more Velcro in their clothes, or with shoes have more orthotic shoes, and so on. We may need to look at more anti-UV type clothing or smart clothing that perhaps might have some electronics in it. These are areas that we need to look at. We also had a program at KCC for personal trainers. And in talking to many of the young students that were into bodybuilding and becoming personal trainers, they were focused on becoming personal trainers for young people. And my message to them was that young people probably will not have the kind of cash that boomers will have to support you in your interest in becoming a personal trainer. So if you are interested in being successful in this area, pay attention to gerontology. Look at the boomer generation and their needs. What I have here, and we're coming to the end right now, is the economic platform. If we were to look at active aging and the infrastructure that could be developed over time for Hawaii to promote an active aging lifestyle, it could have implications not just for, let's say, for tourism. We could create a Hawaii brand of healthy aging tourism and training. For training, we could have the University of Hawaii and community colleges develop perhaps an active aging degree or certificate. The business community perhaps can create active age-friendly business incubation centers. We can have for a community age-friendly intergenerational community development. And we can build consortiums with other countries throughout East Asia with active aging conferences, and even possibly look at a research center focusing on active aging issues. So there are possibilities like that. And if this was to go on with these various industries and structures with on this economic platform, there's a possibility that infrastructurally we can create some excitement for our next generation of students, as well as ways of creating businesses that could support Hawaii for the next generation. So when we look at the active aging agenda, these are things that come to mind as things that can be worked on down the road. We can create courses with the active aging perspective. We have no certificates in this area right now. We can get a better understanding on the negative effects of ageism. We can promote more awareness campaigns to promote viewing older adults as assets to our community. Today we have senior fairs that are basically focused on nursing homes and assisted living and home health care services. We need to look at perhaps an active aging fair for the 50, 60-year-old looking for new opportunities of volunteering and finding jobs, for example. I just came back from Fukuoka, Japan, where they had their 4th or 5th annual active aging fair. And so this is something that is something that perhaps will require a shift in our awareness campaigning. Perhaps we can create a more clearinghouse of opportunities, something like what we've done over at St. Francis for the Hanaho Active Aging Handbook. But there are many, many more that like that we can be creating. And what we created was only for Oahu. We need something similar for each of the other islands. And this is something that should spread elsewhere as well. We need to create more transition into retirement programs. We need to adopt policies, laws perhaps, change some regulations so that we have more age-friendly communities, age-friendly and intergenerational communities to support promoting the continued participation of older adults in the community. We need to support local, national, and international collaborations. Conferences is one way of beginning to have this kind of information sharing. That's so important if we are to move forward with this kind of perspective. And then we need to look for better data for the 50 to 75 age cohort. Health, social issues on the boomers and pre-retirees is needed. We don't have good data for this particular population right now. Much of the focus has been on the old and those that are frail and disabled. So this is the goal that we have here. The goal for gerontology, perhaps, this is just a question mark. Can we create a goal for gerontology that of creating a society of active, engaged, and contributing older adults until their last breath? So this is the perspective of active aging, and this is something that I wanted to share with all of you today. Thank you very much for joining me.